Well, I started driving in 2007. I went to a CDL school in South Florida and went to one of the major trucking fleets. And I immediately found that it was really unsafe. And, and that's what made me, go to social media um, and start talking about my experiences. But I loved the job, driving and the freight and being part of the supply chain. But I thought, wow, this could be so much better. In 2007, there was another organization that had recently formed, and many of us had joined that organization thinking they were going to advocate to improve the industry, and we found that that was not the case. I started learning that there was a number of sexual assaults happening during training, a lot of women falling through the cracks during training that were really not prepared for what they were going to encounter in some of these training fleets. So we spent a couple of years trying to educate that organization about this. We were silenced, censored. So we said, well, you aren't even drivers. We're going to start our own. We're drivers. We're real truck drivers. So we formed Real Women in Trucking in 2013. It started out as a protest group in 2010. By 2013, we were starting to grow, and we formed a nonprofit, a 501c6 trade association. Well, there's many. We've really been inundated since we started our organization with media requests for ride-alongs, for quotes, NPR, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg. We become like the go-to organization for comments on trucking issues. So it sort of forced me to start studying, researching, learning about this industry, how it has come to be the way it is now, with this sort of cattle drive of people every week going into training and many of them failing. We have been invited to Washington, D.C. We were recently at the White House for the Biden Trucking Action Plan event. We've spoken to the FMCSA legislators about trying to get legislation about what's going on in the training and how it is affecting vulnerable people who are really trying to change their life in this industry and then being led astray. Yeah, we get, obviously we get women that contact us who have been sexually assaulted, but some have been violently beaten. Some have been left. We have another organization called Truckers Emergency Assistance Responders. TIER is the acronym, and that organization helps drivers who've been stranded or abandoned by their carrier get home. That kind of came hand in hand with Real Women in Trucking, that a lot of companies will just abandon their driver and they're without consequence. So this other organization has helped us have the funds to be able to get that person home with their pets and belongings. But some of the people that get left, stranded somewhere, we had a gal that was pregnant, and the argument with the dispatcher, and the dispatcher had law enforcement come and evict her from her truck at 2 o'clock in the morning in a town where there was no Uber, no taxi, no Greyhound station, no method of transportation for her to get somewhere with a roof over her head, charge her phone, and get a plan to get home. Wow. So this sort of retaliation and this sort of worker abuse had not really been dealt with, and is not still dealt with many of the existing organizations. And it shouldn't happen in our industry, but it does. And so Real Women in Trucking and TIER have kind of filled that gap to sort of address it, but we'd like to change it so that it's not okay to do that, and it should be forbidden. It should be eradicated from our industry. I started on Twitter in 2008. And I came there because I had been trying to get help on these other women's organization forums. And I found anytime you posted, you'd be censored, you'd be banned from the page, you would be bullied off and made to feel ashamed that you were even bringing the subject up. Like you'd brought it on yourself, there was something wrong with you. So that environment I found to be really toxic.
Oh,
And I thought, you know what? It's clear that this industry does not want to deal with this problem. And they have a lot of trucking media individuals who help them by not writing the story, making it seem like it's an urban myth. So Twitter was an avenue for me to start talking to the general public and saying, this is what's going on in this industry. Will you help me get the message out? Within 9 months, I was on national television. I was in the Twitter documentary. There is a feature-length film being made about our organization right now called Driver that should be, they followed us for 4 years, and it should be out by the end of the year, entered in film festivals. And like I said, became like the go-to organization for major publications and news organizations. It made me 1 degree of separation from those that would actually care about this subject matter. I thought when I first started talking about this, all I needed to do was talk to the high level executives at my company and they do something about it. And then I found out they didn't care. And then I found out it was going on at other companies. And so I joined an organization and they didn't care. And so I tried to contact organizations higher than them and they didn't care. So it was like people are being hurt and none of you want anything to do with this problem because their money is coming from the very companies where it's happening. And that's what the bottom line comes down to. Individual memberships don't buy you a plane. And so I really saw that truck drivers have very few advocates for their workplace conditions. That somebody that will go stick up for them when you finally get a door opened for you and a seat at the table with people that can make significant change in our industry, no one would say a word. So that is why Real Women in Trucking stepped up and said, we're going to go to the meet, we're going to get a seat at that table, and we're going to talk about this stuff. Well, initially I ran all the social media and drove and ran the organization and did all this stuff at the same time. Now we have been able to get help with our social media. We have a social media person. My personal Twitter, I still go on there. I mean, those early days, Twitter changed my life. I was just, like a little ant being ready to be crushed by my companies. The big boot of trucking, you're just another person that just goes in that, churn and burn. And I loved getting on Twitter every day and talking about my day driving and what I was going through and my dog was going through, where we were, the things that we'd see and experience. But now that I'm not able to be on the road, and I just go on my Twitter every once in a while to support other causes that are going on, because I built my Twitter not following other truck drivers that just like to argue and split hairs. I started following people that could take my message to a greater level. So I don't have millions of followers, but I have relevant quality followers that hear what I'm saying. So it is very valuable, not only for trucker causes, but also other causes in the world that need exposure. A retweet can go to some ears that hear it. And I like to support those things, other things in the world, that are going on. No, there's still a concerted effort by this industry and the companies and the organizations they join to say, look at us, how we're supporting, to keep their blinders on. And that is why we're going after legislation right now, because the trucking industry by and large thinks unless the FMCSA tells them to do it, they don't have to do it. So there's all kinds of labor abuse, misclassified drivers, and abandonment, wage theft, sexual assault. There's all kinds of things that are going on in some companies, and they're not being addressed. So we have spoken with the Department of Labor. We have spoken with the FMCSA. They say they can't do anything without Congress untying their hands. We have a dysfunctional Congress. Nonetheless, we are making meetings with legislators to outline the problems in the training with the retention, and how the retention is the problem, not a shortage. We have tons of people coming in. We have a lot of people leaving before they ever become a driver that's an insurable driver by the open marketplace. And that is the goal, is to get them to be insurable. And also, we have sexual predators in trucking. And the way that we have it set up right now is you could rape somebody and then you can go work at another company with a clean slate and get a verification of employment. And this company just gets rid of the problem, but they make the problem for the rest of the community at large. And we would like to see those folks start getting their CDL revoked and being banned from this industry. I don't know why anyone wants a sexual predator to have a license to drive across the United States and be in your neighborhood, parked somewhere, doing whatever it is that they do. They could be in a couple different states in one day. You know, we hear this word safety so very much, you know. I mean, when I first went to the vice president of my company to talk to them about the number of sexual assaults I was hearing about as a student truck driver in this company, and I felt it was very unsafe, because how can you concentrate on learning when you're scared to death of the person that's in the truck with you, who is your coworker? And the first thing he said was, well, I said, it's unsafe. And he said, well, look at all our safety awards. He had this like whole thing, you know, and I just learned that that's their go-to thing. Like, they care about safety, but they don't want to connect the dots that you're making me live with this person who's terrorizing me and I'm shaking. So how am I supposed to drive an 18-wheeler when I'm petrified?
Right.
Focus. Make my turns properly, my lane changes properly when I'm on pins and needles. So it does affect highway safety, and I would like more people to see that. It's personal safety too. Why would you want to encourage more little girls and teenagers and young ladies who are in vulnerable situations, not just women, because this happens to men too. They're just less likely to come forward. Why would you want to encourage more people to come in when you know 5 or 6 companies have an ongoing problem over 10 years of hundreds of people reporting this kind of conduct? So what I'd really like to see, the Department of Labor Women's Bureau hosted a day of action for sexual violence in trucking right after we went to the White House in April, I think. And when they sent the call out to the trucking industry to attend this event, very few came. The ATA didn't come. And they said they'd put out a press release. They didn't put the press release out, and it was during their human resource conference in Orlando. So there really is blinders on. There's really the companies that are the biggest problem. They're always in line to get that government money. They're the first in line for all of these government cheese programs. But when you say, okay, what about this problem? Because you're the company that has hundreds of lawsuits and complaints against you. Crickets. So it's really going to take all of us to start pushing this a little bit further and understanding that we have an epidemic problem, And you are not supporting women if you do not know the specifics of this problem, and stop using women as a marketing tool to say how wonderful your company is, that you're promoting women when you don't even know what you're promoting and supporting. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We got to be a little bit harder on this issue. Our Facebook page is Real Women in Trucking, and our Instagram and Twitter and TikTok tag is @WomenTruckers. We're just getting started over on those platforms. We have a YouTube channel called Women Truckers Network, and I am on Twitter as @TruckerDesiree. I don't really post a whole bunch anymore, but if somebody wanted to get a hold of me, they could contact me through there or our website, Real Women in Trucking.